Hey, Stoney here with another game of Mechabellum, and in this game you'll watch me try to survive a classic 201 build consists of arc lights, stormcallers, and melting points. Let's go. At the bottom here, I am the new Amplify Specialist, and my opponent, Paper Tighter, is a Supply Specialist. So Amplify, this is actually my very first game with the Amplify Specialist. I have no idea what to do with this unit. I actually saw the patch note. I watched a few games, so I kind of got the idea behind it. But I think there's still a lot of unanswered questions with this type of unit. So to start off, because I have the extra items, I've decided let's just try to build a tank cage, right? That makes sense. We're going to have tanks at the front. Probably going to get even more tanks. And tanks is one of those units that if you scale them hard enough, then they'll just become unstoppable. And if you have 3 of these items for them, even better. So that's the rough idea. I'm going to put 2 of them on the initial 2 groups of sledgehammers, and I'm holding on to that one. I think I might use that for a 3rd tank. I might use that for something else. I don't know. My opponent started with Stormcallers, Arclights, and Crawlers. Now, of course, with Stormcallers, all you got to do is to have enough units at the front so that they can keep shelling your units while they're standing and firing. Alright, getting into round 2. Triple Fan is offered. Double Marksman at level 2 is also pretty enticing. I was leaning towards Marksman because I saw the Wraith, and I figured since I have no A whatsoever, and getting that Marksman might be good. But the Triple Fan is just too hard to pass, right? The 3 deployments with virtually no downside because I do need some fans anyways. So I've decided to get the Triple Fan and just buy my Marksman at level 1. My opponent also took the Triple Fangs. I think they are very good, especially into sledgehammers. They tied them up quite a bit. Okay, added my 2 marksmen here. All right, let's talk about the type of game here. So if you are playing as aggro, in this case, like you want to do like a sledgehammer tank cage type of deal, it is very important to recognize when your opponents start to overchaff. Because if you keep putting fans like this, that means at some point he can simply click shield, and all of a sudden your board just stops working because your tanks will be stuck on these fans forever. So in the early stages, if you see this burst of fans, you need to start adding in Stormcallers. You need to start adding in more efficient chaff clear, because in the later rounds, if your units just keep shooting at chaff, they will very rarely get leveled, and that's bad news when you're trying to use carry sledges. For the defender into this sort of build, all you gotta do is, before you have your heavy hitters like scorpions on the board, tie your opponent up as much as you possibly can and prevent your sledgehammers from level. As you can see here, those fans actually tying up all of my units for quite some time. And remember, I still got those 3 arc lights, so my chaff clear isn't exactly crappy, but even then I was not able to fully clear on that right side. On the left side I was doing okay, mostly because there was 1 missing pack of fans. The Stonecallers, they're just getting a huge amount of value in. If I were my opponent, I probably would just level these troops because they're just putting way too much work. Bombard is offered. I think Bombard is a great card to take. At the very least, it punishes the player without shield. You can put a Bombard down and try to see what happens. For the aggro player, is always a little rough with these abilities because there's no way for us to defend. But I'll try anyways, at least to save this marksman. Range went down for my opponent. Range arc lights are excellent at clearing out these initial fangs. They're also pretty good in the late arriving crawlers, and with 5 arc light versus the 3 of mine, which now also have range. I think my opponent definitely have a legs up when it comes to chaff clear. He not only has more chaff, he also has more clear. So my tanks and my marksmen would need a bit more support before they can be enabled and shoot at the right target. Now, everything right now is going really according to plan for my opponent. At the beginning of this video, I mentioned this is a classic 201 build. So the way it usually goes is you have Stormcallers. The first round, it depends on what sort of unit you have. It could be Stormcallers, Crawler, Fans. It could be Stormcaller, Arclight, and Crawlers. But usually, at some point at round 3, you will get range on the Arclights. And then at round 4, either you get more Arclights or more Stormcallers. Or it depends on what a car offers, right? You sometimes take Marksman, just sort of a middle unit to provide yourself with a bit of anti-air. And then in starting at around round 5, you started putting down Melting Point if one isn't dropped for you already. Alright, couple good cards. Missile Strike is offered. So Smoke Bomb is also pretty good. Smoke Bomb is able to tie the Stormcallers up a little bit. I've decided to take the missile because I do expect my opponent to maybe take the missile. But for me, I mean, it's a little futile to guess where he's going to hit. I don't have a lot of great customers. So my first guess is probably just like an Arclight Marksman combo. So he gets almost an Arclight and then an entire Marksman. But these two, they're going to get levels, so it's probably going to go hit this way. My opponent actually responded with 2 bubbles. And this answers both the Smoke Bomb and the Missile Strike. Alright. After seeing how much work my army had to do to get through that layers of chaff, I've decided to just add 2 squads of Stormcallers. And my opponent here decided to just add Marksman. So Marksman is a great sort of in-between units before you can afford Melting Point. They serve the purpose of just picking my units, namely my Arclights, off the board so that when it all comes down, it's just hopefully his Marksman and Stonecaller versus my Stonecallers. And slowly but surely, my opponent's board is becoming better than mine. And that is very worrisome because he could very well just take the game and run with it. And I've played a lot of these 201 builds, and almost always they are a hard scaling late game build. Whether it is, you know, this sort of range type of build, or if you use Sledgehammer boats, which is not a very popular build right now. They all just very much aimed at the later game. And if you can't win in the early rounds, it's very difficult to climb out of that hole once their build is complete. So I was extremely worried at this point. Nano Repair Kit is offered. I know that I want to go Giant at some point. I just don't have the money, or just not in the right position to go Giants yet. So I just decided to take it. I want to hold on to it. Rhino drop was offered in this round. I don't have a great means to defend against the Rhino, so I've decided to try to defend against it using a Impact Drill Crawlers. Impact Drill is a very cheap tech now. I think it's only 150. A group of level 1 Impact Drill Crawlers can actually bring down a level 1 Rhino. So you can use that to your advantage. It is a cheap tech upgrade, and it's a very commonly used tech upgrade as it defends against replicate, and also it allows your claws just to be a little bit more scary when you put them on the flanks. My opponent decided to just use the Rhino as a big shield, so it's going to drop it on his side of the board. He decided to triple shield his board and continue to add on to this Marksman. And now with range. So he's really committing into this build. Instead of pivoting hard into Melting Point, it's going to go with the Marksman. I don't disagree with the marksman because a melting point is excellent into giants, and I don't have any giants on the board, so these marksmen would do just fine against the medium units that I have on the board. Alright, the Rhino is getting closer. It's quite scary. The marksman here has been stuck on the shield bubble forever. It's actually paying great dividends. I don't think this marksman can actually kill it, which means half of its HP was just given to my opponent for free. And another huge round from my opponent. Alright, the unit drop. Melting point is offered. And I expect my opponent to take the melting point. None of the other drops actually make a lot of sense. I think Farseer is okay, because Farseer provides you a bit of an end round firepower, and also they're very tanky. Most players at this stage will probably be feel pretty bad because there's no clear crack in my opponent's armor. He seems to have every angle covered. He's got lots of chaff. He's got an extremely potent firing line. He has better chaff clear than I have, and he has more marksmen with higher levels, and now he's got the melting point. What could you possibly do to get this game back? Right? It seems very difficult. Well, so here's my thought process. First, let's figure out what has been killing a lot of my stuff. The conclusion was these Stonecallers, they're simply just a little too good at chaff clear. I need to stop the bleeding on the chaff clear side, so I decided to take shield, and I've also decided to take 2 anti-missile devices. These are going to stop the Stonecallers, and then the shield are going to slow down his arc lights. And with that setup, I'm hoping my arc lights can get through his arc lights, or get the chaff and his arc lights, so that my snipers can finally start shooting at something worthy. Now, I know I am Amplify Specialist, but so far I have not really played into that at all. My tanks, they are just chaff at this point. I mean, I'm utilizing that 20% HP, but that's not much, to be fair. If I ever decided to pivot into like a giant, I will sell my tanks, and I will get whatever the item into my giant. All right, the first round, it seems to be working okay. The plan of winning that chaff war is definitely working. I am not winning it very hard, but I think I'm definitely not losing. I think this round, yeah. Now we're just gonna have to do it a couple more times. Bombard is offered once again. Bombard is a brutal card in this stage of the game. It just kills so much chaff, and there's no way for you to really defend against everything. However, nobody took Bombard. The reason that nobody took Bombard, I think, is that one, my opponent already has shields, and I noticed he already has 2 shields. So I was doing math in my head. If I were to do Bombard, I'd probably do it right in the middle. And guess what's happening in the middle? My opponent puts down another shield. But my opponent, he didn't take Bombard in the first round. Maybe he just doesn't like the skill. But I don't know. Because I would have totally taken Bombard if I were my opponent. I have chaff scatter all over, and you could definitely get a pretty good value out of that. And besides, he's got his level 2 Stonecaller, so he can prop my shield if I'm placing them a little bit too forward. So I think it was a mistake that he didn't take Bombard. All right, we both took additional deploy. I think additional deploy makes sense for me because I'm running shielded fans, and later on I could use a lot more of those. But for my opponent, it's a whole different story. Instead of getting chaff, it's just going to be more Stonecallers. But now with fire. And this is devastating because with fire, a shield defense out of sun becomes pretty useless. Because they will just keep walking into the fire, shield or not. I also triple shield, or at least cover as much as the area as I can, because I was expecting Bombard. And it's funny how a seemingly wonderful card gets taken by nobody. My AM devices are defending Son of the Fire, but the fires are definitely doing work. They're killing a lot of my shielded fans. My opponent has later arriving fans, which means I'm currently losing the Chaff war a little bit. The problem with losing Chaff war is that my opponent actually has giants, which means in the later rounds, he has more beef. Right, he can tank more shots. Well, I will have to rely on my shields, which is not what you want to do. All right, looks like another devastating loss for me. Hopefully I can save this AM device. And indeed I do, but will I stay in the game? I think I'll still stay in the game for 328 HP. All right. Efficient Giant is offered. Efficient Tech is also offered, but neither of these are particularly good for my board. I've already teched several units already. With Giants, I don't have any Giants. Right now, I'm not planning on building any Giants because I never catch up to my opponent's Giants with the melting point. So instead, I wanted to get into more of a direct approach. So here's the idea. Last round, we saw there were two weaknesses. The first weakness is that we were not winning the Chaff war. So, winning the Chaff war means getting rid of your opponent's Chaff before they get rid of yours. Sometimes new players might mistake that as just having more Chaff. But in reality, Chaff war has two components. Chaff clear and Chaff. If you want to win the Chaff war, you need more Chaff and better Chaff clear. So in this case, I've decided, okay, more Chaff or more Chaff clear. And then the other part is how do I get rid of these melting points in the end? Because I need more damage. So what is that one unit that can provide Chaff clear, but also late game damage? Stormcallers. That's how I arrive at the conclusion of just getting 3 more packs of Stormcallers and a roll of anti-missile devices. And it's working. As you can see, I still have Chaff on the ground, which means my opponent's melting point are wasting their shot on the shielded fangs. My Stormcallers are actually killing a lot of my opponent's units. And combine that with Marksman, which ties them down, and get them disabled with EM. Fantastic. Efficient Giant is offered again. Mass-produced Sandworm is offered. Mass-produced Sandworm is actually very interesting because when your opponent has so many Stormcallers, you can do a mass-produced Sandworm with mechanical division and just start cranking out a lot of larvae and just distract these Stormcaller shots. All right, for my side, I've decided to take range. Well, range was taken last round, so I can get first shot off, and then I've taken launcher overload. So I want to double down on that strategy and just make sure that I have overwhelming firepower. And this is a viable strategy because I have a lot of shield defense. And my opponent, aside from the Stormcallers, he really doesn't have a lot of great options to clear out his fans. He doesn't have any Vulcans, right? So having a lot of just Alpha Strike type firepower would be very good into a board like this. My opponent took EM on the melting point. I'm not sure if that's sort of a panic move or is that just something that he wants to do. I'm not a big fan of EM. I think the EM was really for the later round where he's trying to have melting point versus marksman. But I feel like the marksman will always get first shot onto the melting point, and once you get first shot, that marksman will continue to shoot at that melting point, continuously disabling it, therefore making the EM pretty useless. And you'll see that in just a few seconds. Alright, so we're getting things to the front. I mean, the EM did fire off a couple times, but it's really not hitting anything important. This melting point is now locked in. You will never fire another EM ever again. This melting point again, locked in. EM is being fired. This one is locked in. Okay, you got one marksman. Great. Fired again. Yep. So yeah, I don't think the EM was very good for my opponent. But for now, there's 2 rounds down, and it seems like my opponent really doesn't have an answer to this mass Stormcaller play with Launcher Overload. But he's not dead yet, which means he definitely can turn this around. And we have the final unit drop. Vulcan is offered. I think Vulcan would be a great choice for both of us. And it all just comes down to how you want to use this Vulcan. Alright, I have the Vulcan right here in the middle. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put Vulcan on a mobile beacon with incendiary. So essentially it becomes this giant incendiary firing tower and just moving back and forth at the front line. My opponent also took the Vulcan. And this potentially could be the last round. And here's my incendiary. My opponent does not require incendiary because he already got fire callers. However, he does need something to help him clear out my front line a little bit faster, because his fire callers are just getting stumped by my AM devices. Okay, Vulcan got ranged and now is hiding back there to get rid of my side crawlers so that they don't attract too many of these volleys from the fire. Missile go down. Fire. And oh, actually, no, oil coming down this side. It was my mistake to not realizing that this could be a play. But it's very difficult to defend because I could only have shield up to the line. So my board will still be oil. And because my opponent already has a melting point at the front, even if I put shield down, it's at the risk of being popped by the melting point's EM barrage. So I guess I have to suffer through that. So oil did go down. But luckily, what I do have is high-level Stormcallers. Almost all of my Stormcallers are level 2 or above, which means they hit extremely hard. My opponent did not respect my Stormcallers at all with AM devices, which means they're getting the full value. The Sandworm is still left standing. It is a level 2 worm with armor, so it does take a while to kill, but I'm feeling pretty confident that I can get to that Sandworm, and indeed I did. And just like that, I was able to crawl out of a very unfavorable position up against this classic 201 build. And the answer really lies into that single unit that can deal with chaff clear, but also deal with end of the round damage, and that is the Stormcaller. How would you have played this round if you were in my position at, say, round 7? Let us know in the comments. And I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you want to see another video, here's one for you. And I hope to see you on the next one.
Prepare your tactics. Mechabellum's calling. Deploy your fortress. The battlefield's alive with swarms.